Now, it would be wrong for me to start my speech today without saying something pretty obvious, and that is that anything we do here today, this conference, is going to be overshadowed by what's happening in Copenhagen. And that's not just in relation to our conference. I suspect every single conference anywhere in the world for the next 2 weeks is actually going to be overshadowed, because such is the significance and historic significance of the Copenhagen climate change discussions and negotiations. They are hugely important, arguably the most important meetings that have ever taken place in the world. And I just want to put that into a clear perspective, because although we're talking about very important things, I think what's happening not so far away, just a few thousand miles away, is going to be looked at by many generations in the future to see if we grasp the very significant opportunities or not. Now, whatever hopes I have of the Climate Change Summit, and I have very positive hopes for that, we must ensure that we fully capitalise on the opportunities that come from Copenhagen, so that we can take advantage of the momentum that will be generated both for greening our planet and for UK businesses and jobs. I think there is a great opportunity that comes off the back of Copenhagen, which I'm very keen that we take full advantage of. And the challenge for the UK is to use this momentum about these truly historic discussions, or that come from these truly historic discussions, as a launch pad. What we have to do is make sure that our industry doesn't just grow or thrive, but actually, even better than that, I hope that we completely excel in the challenges that we will be able to take on post-Copenhagen. And the good news is that everybody here, gathered here today, have terribly positive, really positive business prospects. You are in exactly the right place as a business person to be right now with Copenhagen going on. And what I find really, really exciting about this is that the UK's environmental sector is already amongst the very best in the world. We're already in a very, very good place to take full advantage of this. And if we can quickly grasp the opportunities that are there now, and those that are very soon to be made available, we, I suspect, will be hugely successful, arguably more successful than any other UK industry that's ever been before. That's so important to, I think, this industry is going to be to the UK. So, in fact, the overall message I want to give you today is that the environment is essential for economic growth, contrary to what is often thought. The two are actually not mutually exclusive. So let's talk about the strategic context facing the environmental industry, because there are challenges for sure. Firstly, and very simply, human beings need to halt and reverse the damage we've been doing to our environment. I'm sure anyone disagree with me? Good, pleased to hear that. Secondly, we have to put an end to the exploitation of natural resources and stop using them so recklessly, frankly, and inefficiently. Thirdly, we must stop creating the towering mountains of waste, of which there is a huge amount. And fourthly, we also need to stop damaging the ecosystems which provide us with the fundamentals our economy relies on. So whether that's raw materials, such as timber and minerals, or essential resources, including food or clean water and clean air. And finally, and crucially, we must break our dependency on fossil fuels. Apart from anything else, they won't last forever, but actually, they're alarmingly polluting and cause, of course, dangerous climate change. Now, these are truly sobering messages, that's for sure, and so depressing to some people that they are actually in denial about climate change and grasp any sliver of what they call evidence to suggest that all this overwhelming evidence from all around the world for a long time is somehow wrong. But look, despite the heavy message about what could happen, I feel genuinely optimistic and positive about the challenges ahead, huge as they may be. And if there's one message that I want you to take away with you today, above any other, and that is that economic growth and no longer automatically means increases in consumption and damage to the planet. So growth doesn't mean that consumption has to go up, and as a consequence the planet has to be damaged. That's a very important message I want to mention today. And for the first time ever, I would argue, economic growth can now mean exactly the opposite, that growth can actually result in reductions in consumption and benefits to the environment. So we can have the growth and improve the environment too. Now, in the UK, our environment sector is worth over £106 billion and employs nearly 900,000 people, as we heard in the opening remarks. And even with the world's current economic downturn, employment in this sector is still expected to increase to 1.3 million people within the next decade. That's a huge expansion. And it is the fast-growing environmental concern amongst consumers that is helping to drive the greening of business, I'm pleased to say, all along the supply chain. Never before has the importance of being green and protecting the environment been so high in the consciousness of government and, even more importantly, of the people. So, since the late 1700s, let's get that date right, we've been on a steep trajectory of industrial and economic growth. And in the industrialised countries themselves, this economic growth has improved our quality of life. That's true. In many respects, things have improved because of industrialisation and the wealth that it's created, changing the world almost beyond recognition. And if you imagine that on a graph, I see this black line, or maybe a charcoal grey line, I should say, the colour of coal, the smoke, the waste, and the pollution that it leaves in its wake. But there's also another line, a green line, one that historically has had a much more modest trajectory, at least until the second half of the 20th century, when suddenly it turned upwards. So why is it green? Well, it's because green symbolises nature, fertility, life itself. And after all, it is the colour of chlorophyll, the natural powerhouse that drives photosynthesis. And what we're here to talk about is how we can make that green line catch up with the black one, to merge them, to break the link between economic growth and consumption, and the damage to our planet. And we need to realise how focusing on the environment can support and drive economic growth, be a positive thing, rather than viewing it the two as being separate. So, what role has government got in all this? Well, you won't be surprised to hear me say that we can make a crucial contribution to that. Government helps create the conditions that allow the environmental sector to fully grasp, to really embrace and take on board the new opportunities, and to be able to grow them in a genuinely sustainable way. Now, government can help shape markets, that's true, and through mechanisms like landfill tax and the EU emissions trading scheme, we have provided a very clear signal about the direction of future environmental policy. Sometimes we'll inevitably need to rely on direct regulation. I can't deny that, that is true. But let's be crystal clear. Now is not the time for micro-regulation, red tape and unnecessary restrictions. And that's why the government is committed to reducing the administrative burdens on regulations by 25% between 2005 and 2010. And I'm pleased to tell you today that we're well on track to achieve this, having already delivered £2.9 billion per year of savings for businesses out of our £3.3 billion target. Now, the government has sent some strong signals about the importance of energy supplies. Meeting our 15% renewable energies by 2020 target could provide a huge sum, about £100 billion worth of investment opportunities and up to 500,000 jobs. Massive, massive figures and important figures too. And this will create crucial opportunities in wind, marine and solar power and many other key technologies. We often talk about the first three I mentioned, but there are other things going on as well, of course. And government can provide direct incentives too, and that's important that we do so. Without question, public spending will be constrained in the years ahead. I hope no one is surprised to hear that. So we do need to be specially creative and effective in how we target what funds we have. So we're supporting investment as a government in water and energy efficiency technologies through the Enhanced Capital Allowance Scheme. We're providing grants for anaerobic digestion and composting and pumping investment into waste infrastructure generally. We're also supporting other technology programs such as the £400 million worth of support to encourage the development and uptake of ultra-low emission vehicles. We are setting standards for energy using products too, and for the way that businesses are run, and setting targets for waste reduction, for carbon reduction, for air quality, and for renewable energy. And as importantly, we're educating and informing. That is hugely important too. And providing advice, for example, with our Act on CO2 campaign, which I hope you're all familiar with. And through our resource efficiency campaign, we're trying to help small and medium-sized businesses realise the £6.4 billion a year, so £6,400 million a year, which our research suggests is available through a series of low-cost, even no-cost measures. So government has a range of policy instruments available to use, and different combinations of measures will be required if we are to achieve genuinely sustainable growth. But the direction of travel set by this government is clear. Green growth is the only sustainable growth there is. So, where do all of you today, sitting in this hall, come in? What is the role for the industry? As the transition to green gathers pace, there's going to be a shift. To use a health analogy, it's going to be more about preventing and less about cure. Rather than mopping up, it's not about making a mess. It's about rather than making a mess in the first place. I can't read my own writing here. Rather than mopping up, it's not about making a mess in the first place. So I'm not clear about that. It's a different kind of strategy. And that's going to create some challenges for sure, but it also creates important opportunities. And some businesses are already ahead of the game. Saving money and saving the environment simultaneously. But we need other companies to follow suit. And that's where you all come in. The environmental industries have an absolutely vital role to play here. You can help companies look at all the processes to identify the carbon and monetary savings they can make. And we need you to encourage them to look further and up the supply chain to focus on preventing environmental consequences rather than looking at how to cure them. So instead of putting in a filter in a SPAC to collect emissions, for example, we need to focus on new processes which don't produce the emissions in the first place. Bluntly, your expertise is essential. You are the inventors, the innovators, and the providers of green technology. And we need you to be the architects of a green, climate-resilient infrastructure, to be the experts on resource efficiency, and the creators of a world without waste. That is a huge responsibility. That is a big ask of you, but I believe you are capable of providing it. And government, therefore, wants to support you in this, because we know that it's only with your talent, your hard work, that we will be able to successfully turn that black line to green, to both combat climate change and secure that vital, sustainable economic growth essential to the UK's future and its prosperity. Thank you.